It has been 2 months since I set up my Fluval FX2 filter. It's definitely due for a clean. I tend to do a clean on my canister filters every 2 to 3 months. This works for me in my situation. However, it is recommended to do a clean every 1 to 2 months rather than 2 to 3. Just keeps things a bit fresher. Also, most of the chemical filtration that you put into a canister filter, like carbon or the embedded filter pads, last roughly around 30 days. So that's a good time frame to be cleaning. Now, I expect this to be quite full of gunk because, as I said, it's been 2 to 3 months, and also this tank was quite dirty when I put this on here, so a lot of that waste has been removed into this filter. Gives us a good opportunity to see how much waste an FX2 can handle. The first thing we are going to want to do is just to unplug your filter. This is just obviously removing the power source from your filter. The next thing we're going to do is close our AquaStop valves so we can remove our pipe work. I'm going to start with the intake, turned anti-clockwise, we'll close the valve. Same on the outtake. And that's done. What I recommend you do before you actually go any further is, one, make sure you have a bucket to put your filter into, because this can be a bit messy. On the FX4s and FX6s, you have a drain valve which allows you to just get rid of all the water before you move it. However, on the FX2, that doesn't exist. So we're going to stick it straight into a bucket. The other thing you're going to need is a source of water. The reason for this is there's obviously a reasonable amount of water in this filter. When you take it out, we're removing that water and it's going to need to be replaced. I do highly recommend that you do this filter clean at the same time as you do a water change, which just makes life a lot easier. It is quite simple to remove this now. We just push these clips in and remove the AquaStop valves. You might get a little bit of water coming out the pipe, but you'll also notice that it is completely sealed off. And we'll just repeat the process on the other side. Easy peasy. So now we can just remove the filter from where it is. It may be a bit heavy. So now the filter is removed from wherever you may have it, maybe in your cabinet, next to your aquarium, wherever it is. We've got it in our container to catch any water. As you can see, when we removed those AquaStop valves, there was a little bit of water. Undo the top, doing that equally around. So I like to do them in opposites where possible, just so we don't get any bending of the lid, same way that we do them up. And then we can remove the lid, get rid of any water. And as I said, it's filthy. I kind of knew it would be filthy. I kind of knew that this would be the state of my filter, and that's fine. I was expecting it. It has had to deal with a lot of gunk. You can see actually how much rubbish has been caught, which is great because that's what I got this filter to do. So, 2 ways of doing it. You can just drain the water out through the side, or if you have another container or perhaps your bathtub or wherever, sink, you can pull all the media out like so. Doesn't really matter which way you do it, it's more for your preference. I'm initially just going to get rid of this. We'll come back to the container shortly. But we have to deal with this dirty media to start with. So as I said, it would be quite handy to do this while you're doing a water change, because that will give you some water to clean your media in. We don't really want to clean this in tap water. Now, I know some people do, and if you live in a country where the chlorine in your tap water isn't very high, then it would be fine to do it if you had a freshwater system. My tanks are salt water, so if I cleaned all my foams and things in fresh water, it wouldn't be very good for the bacteria and everything else living within my media. So that's why I'm going to use salt water to do it. What I'm going to do though, is I'm going to get rid of this horrible water and use some water from my system. So there we go, just taking some fresh water out of my system, and I'm now just going to clean the sponges. If you remember how you set this filter up, you can just do the opposite to that and take it all apart, give these little sticks, a little rinse. They shouldn't need too much cleaning. And then we'll just take all the filter media apart. You can see most of the heavy lifting has been done around the side sponges, and that's exactly what they're designed to do. That way the dirt is trapped on the outside and our biomedia is nice and clean. And this means that this filter is working effectively. If it wasn't working effectively, this media would be full of dirt and debris, which is not what we want, because that will clog up all of the pores where the bacteria lives, and it just wouldn't work very well. But there is a sponge below it, which is the carbon one, and again that's nice and clean, which means the carbon is being used but it's not getting clogged up with rubbish. You can see though there was a little bit of dirt in there, and that's fine, it's not too bad. Now if you were using chemical filtration, so this being a carbon sponge, now would be the time that you change it. You'd put a fresh carbon sponge in there, or you would put perhaps your replacement powder medias like your nitrate remover, phosphate remover, normally come in a little bag, and that's when you would replace it. I'm not going to continue using carbon. I'll continue using the sponge. It'll work as a nice little fine polishing sponge right at the end, but I'm not going to replace it. That's just my personal preference. What I will do though is I'll take all these sponges out. You can see how dirty they are. They're not actually as bad as I thought. It's just this hair algae that's growing in my system that's being caught, which is fine. And then one by one, you just give them a little rinse. Now some people can go overboard with this, and the idea is not to completely destroy everything that's living in there. Now I know these are mainly for your mechanical filtration, but they still act as a home for bacteria. It still becomes part of your biological filtration, so it's worth being a little bit gentle to them. Don't bleach them or do anything silly, even if there's a little bit of dirt left on them. You know, I can't get everything out, but I'll do my best. But that's okay, that's cleaner than it was going to be, and it's now serviceable again. So that's fine, I'll put that to one side, and I'll just continue going through all my sponges, cleaning as and where necessary. Another thing you might want to do is just give the tray a clean. It can catch bits of dirt. This isn't too bad, if I'm honest with you. Just needs a little bit of manual cleaning, but obviously this you can take away if you wanted to. You could give it a rinse under your tap or whatever, because this doesn't really provide any biological filtration. It's just some plastic, so it's perfectly fine to take away and give a good scrub if you want to. And then once you've finished, you can just put all your media back in. With your biomedia, you don't really have to do a lot with this. This is pretty clean. It doesn't need a lot of work, but if you need to, you can just give it a rinse, a little bit of a shuffle, but don't do too much to your biomedia. It does need replacing, but probably only every 2 or 3 years. It's quite good stuff, this. You'll notice when it needs replacing, because your tank might go a bit cloudy, but I'm a long way off that. So I'll just put this back together. There is a correct way of putting your sponges in. The corrugated side needs to go on the outside. That just provides greater surface area. You just push them back in, and you know this isn't perfectly clean. You might notice it's not perfectly clean, and it's the same on the other side. So we'll just go ahead and give that a clean and back in. So that's our first tray done. We can put that to one side and work on our second tray. Now I have modified this slightly. I've put some fine filter floss in there. You can buy Fluval filter pads which do the same job. I prefer to use this bag of floss basically because it works out a bit cheaper, and it's a lot thicker, so I just prefer it to use my own stuff. Get rid of that. That can't be cleaned. You just get rid of it, and I'll replace that before I put it back together. And then the same sequence of events basically. Clean the plastic. You know, it's just doing a little bit of a quick clean. Clean our sponges, just roughly. I'm actually impressed with this. It's taken out all of the junk that I expected it to, but it's not as dirty as I thought it would be, which is interesting because I have put a lot of rubbish into this filter. From where I'm trying to clean that system up, or that tank up, it's had issues with hair algae, and I've just been scraping the hair algae off and letting the filter suck it up. So it has had a lot of abuse in its 2 months, and it's amazing to see how well it's processed all that dirt. You can see there's bristleworms living in here, which is fine. I'm not going to try and remove them. It does make cleaning it a little bit more treacherous for me because I'm no doubt going to get stung a few times by these bristleworms. Just makes my hand a little bit itchy really. I know when I've been stung because in about half an hour I'll get a slight raised bit of skin and it'll be really itchy for the next probably 16 hours. It doesn't do me any harm other than that, so I'm getting used to being stung by bristleworms now. In fact, I got stung yesterday cleaning. You can see on my finger there the red mark, that's from that. It's been itching really badly, but it's fine. So now I'm going to replace my filter media, the fine filter, balance that there, and I'll show you what I use. So I use this Sierra filter wool. Other brands are available, it's all the same stuff. But you can see the size of this bag, and it's all mushed in there. So this bag I think was like £11, but it's probably going to last me, well, probably a good year at the rate that I go through it, so that's really good value. And I just put a layer in there, just like that. There is probably a better way of doing it, but I just stuff it in there. And then we put our other pad back on the top. And in terms of cleaning the media, that's it. It's clean, you know. It's going to work now. You don't need to be meticulous. You do need to make sure the sponges are all the way to the bottom though, because we don't want to leave gaps for water to get through. We want all the water to pass through our sponges, so just go round making sure that you pull all the sponges down. Every little gap, as far as you can see, is filled. And then we'll move on to the canister. Now this isn't a very old canister, so it's still really clean. You don't really need to do anything with it. You can give it a once round with a brush or something if you want to. I'm not going to bother. All I'm going to do is make sure that the seal is in place, which it is. There's a seal that goes all the way around there. It's still in place. It's not broken or anything. Another thing that we can do, if we need to, is inspect our impeller. You shouldn't need to do this. It's not really something I've ever needed to do on an FX filter. My FX4 filter, I've never looked at the impeller, and it's about 4 years old. But if you need to, there's 3 screws. It's really simple to access. They're just Phillips crosshead screws. You undo all them, and then the impeller and the pump come away from the actual filter body itself. Why would you need to do this? Well, it is good routine, maybe every 6 months just to check it, but as I said, I haven't really bothered on my FX4. But you can get issues with impellers. I haven't quite undone that one properly. I found that Fluval ones don't tend to have issues. I've never really had problems with Fluval filters. I'm making hard work of this. Make sure you undo your screws completely when you do this. Don't lose them. So that's what it looks like on the inside. I mean, you can see this is basically brand new still. There's no build up of dirt. There's no issues whatsoever. It does just pull out. So sometimes in filters that have been running for a while, you'll get slime build up around the magnet. I mean, you can see a little bit of dirt building up. You could potentially break your impeller shaft. It is ceramic, so they can break sometimes. I would doubt it, but you can actually, sometimes the impeller parts themselves can break. There's a few bits that can go wrong, but what you're mainly doing here is just inspecting it, making sure it's okay, giving it a cleaning in there. You could use a bottle brush to do that, and just getting out any of the bacterial build-up and mold build-up, because that's what causes the friction, and that's what causes these to break. So this is perfect, but in an older model you might expect this to be a lot dirtier. There's also a seal going around there, so if you find that this is leaking, not that I've ever had that, but again, if you find it's leaking, this is the seal, and that might be the reason. It might have got dirty, or just seals are made of rubber normally, and they do degrade over time, so that's something else that you can check. Another thing we can do before we start the filter back up is to give our outlets and our inlet a good clean. I'm not actually going to do it in this video because my outlet is clean enough and I'm trying to let this coralline algae grow over it, but you could easily remove this from the pipework, take it away and give it a scrub if you want to. With the inlet, it's the same sort of thing really. I'm quite happy with the state it's in. I do give it a daily brush and I suction all the dirt off of it, but it's easily removable. If you've seen my setup video, you'll know. You just take it away from the pipework and then you can go and clean that at your leisure. The bottom half does come away, so if you want to, you can give it a clean on the inside as well. So now it's time to put it all back together again, which I think you'll appreciate is just doing the opposite of how we took it apart. It is good practice though to now give your filter body a bit of a clean. I will put it all back together first though, just so that I can do the lid at the same time. What you'll find is over time you get dust building up on these filters, and also in a saltwater tank like mine you get salt creep as well. So we'll just do all these up. We'll do them in opposites, just so we don't put any stress on the lid. Before we put it together, what we could have done as well is check the seal around the lid to make sure that's in good condition, because again they can perish being made of rubber materials, and that's where you'd find a lot of your common leaks come from. When filters start to leak, it tends to be around the lid seal. And there's some more seals here. It's all replaceable. If it starts leaking, not a big deal. You just buy a new seal and that normally fixes the problem. So we'll get a towel. With our towel, we just give it a clean, get off all the dust. One thing I do find annoying on these filters is the design of the lid. It's got these ridges and then it's hollows. I imagine that's to do with strengthening in it for pressure, stopping the lid bowing. That's my guess what it's for. Let me know if I'm right. But with saltwater tanks, it's annoying because the salt can build up in these, so it is important that you just give them a good clean if you care. I mean, you don't have to. It's only you who's going to be seeing this, and really it's aesthetic how it looks, but I like it to look nice because it's on display. So nice, clean. Make sure any water that's got onto the plug, which is very naughty, you get rid of. These are sealed plugs, which is handy other than the fuse, so if it does blow it's going to be the fuse, but it didn't get that wet, it was fine, it's fine. Just put that up there for the minute. How did I have this orientated before? Pretty much where you can see the divots. So we'll reconnect our pipework. Let's have a look. How was it? Like that. So our inlet valve goes on the in. When you push it down, make sure it clicks. Same with the outlet. Push it down, clicks. Pipework is all in place above. And what we need to do now is open the inlet valve. And you'll hear the water filling. Then we'll open the outlet valve. And I can hear more water filling. You'll probably better see some bubbles coming out of there in a minute. And then I'll just plug it in. And it should spring into life. And you see as it refills the canister, all the air comes out. This can get a little bit messy with all the splashing on the surface if you haven't got a lid. and once the bubbles stop, you know it's done. So when you plug the filter in, it will go for about a minute, fill itself up, and then it will turn off for a minute, which is what it's done now, and that's just to purge more air. So in maybe 30 seconds this will turn back on, all the air will come out, and we've completed our filter clean.